Okay, mathematicians, welcome back. So this is going to be the second video following up, hopefully, the first video you saw. Remember, for this week, we are continuing our work with multi-step word problems. And unlike on the other weeks where you had one word problem to look at, this week you have two in your assignment to look at. If you saw the first one, you know that word problem was about iPads, and this word problem is about something different. Now, I remember mentioning last week we were going to have a teacher parade. Unfortunately, it got postponed because there weren't enough police able to escort the teachers in the cars. So from what I know, it's going to be scheduled for this Friday instead. But as soon as Mrs. Correa or I find out that information, we'll post it. But anyways, even though we already did some word problems relating to the teacher parade, I thought that we could do another one just because I thought this would be a really fun word problem for us to do. Ready? So, if you know your teacher, Mrs. Correa, she has a favorite donut shop in San Pedro, one of her favorites, and that's called The Donut. I've had some of their donuts there, and I think I've even brought some for my class as well, and Miss Dusevich might have. I'm not too sure, but they are really, really delicious donuts. But one of the special things that they have that I haven't seen at any other donut shop is that they have these sort of little, like mini donuts. In most donut shops, they have donut holes, but they actually have like little tiny mini donuts available at the donuts. And when we're having celebrations, sometimes that's what Mrs. Correa loves to get. So I talked to Mrs. Correa, and she said that for the teacher parade, because she's so excited to see everyone, she was planning on bringing donuts for the teachers to share. Doesn't that sound amazing? Well, guess what? Mrs. Dusevich also wants to bring something because she hasn't seen everyone in a while, and I'm not sure if she'll be able to go and join the parade because of her baby and her kids, but she is planning on bringing something for the teachers to share, at least at the beginning. So this is a Mrs. Correa and Mrs. Dusevich problem. Are you ready to read it with me? So, Mrs. Correa brought some donuts for the teachers to share at the parade. Can you picture that, mathematicians? Can you picture all those teachers sharing the donuts already? Can you picture that? What flavors do you think they're eating? Oh, because there's so many. There's glaze, there's sugar, there's sprinkle, there's cake donuts, there's old-fashioned. Oh, there's so many delicious donuts to choose from. Now, Mrs. Dusevich brought some donuts too. So far, what do you understand happening in the problem? Think to yourself, what is happening in the problem? What do you understand is happening? Can you turn and talk and tell someone next to you, what do you understand from the word problem so far? Some of you may also be reading on to the next part already because you're fully prepared. That's great. Let's read it together though. Ready? But blank donuts accidentally fell out of Mrs. Correa's box. So if you've ever bought a lot of donuts, you know that they don't put them in a bag. They usually put them like in this little pink box, or like if you're buying some from Krispy Kreme in their sort of branded box. But when you're buying a large amount, they usually do put them in a box so it's easier for you to carry and put in your car. But by accident, look what happened to Mrs. Correa's donuts. Some of them fell out. Oh my goodness. So wait, Mrs. Correa brought some donuts. Mrs. Dusevich brought some. So if you look at the amount of donuts they bought, it was more. Like the numbers were getting bigger. But now look to what happened in the next part right here. Some donuts fell out. Should people eat those donuts if they fell out? No. Might some of them do? Possibly. It's not healthy. It's definitely not hygienic, especially during these crazy times. But let's look at it again. Some of them fell out. So you shouldn't probably eat any of those donuts that fell out. So even though the amount of donuts at the beginning of the problem was bigger because Mrs. Correa brought some donuts and Miss Dusevich brought some donuts, after some donuts fell out, I'm thinking the number is going to get slightly smaller. So let's look at the question and think if we understand what the question is asking us to do. Ready? How many donuts are left for the teachers to eat? Oh, wait, so I see. So it's not asking how many donuts Mrs. Jusevich and Mrs. Correa had when they brought them to the parade. It's asking how many donuts were available for all the teachers to eat after some of them fell out of Mrs. Correa's box. That's important for us to understand. It's not asking us how many donuts Mrs. Correa and Ms. Jusevich brought for the teachers to share. It's asking us how many donuts were left after some fell out. That's going to help us in thinking of strategies for when we solve the problem. Are you ready? So let's look at the number sets for this problem. Ready? And again, they're very similar to the ones from last week, and that's purposeful because I really want you to try to use strategies that highlight your ability to use friendly numbers to solve problems. If you choose to use a different strategy, that's amazing too, but I also want you to push yourself to try and use a strategy that uses friendly numbers. Ready? So for the first problem set, it would be Mrs. Correa brought 10 donuts for the teachers to share at the parade. Mrs. Dusevich brought 25 donuts too. But 2 donuts accidentally fell out of Mrs. Correa's box. How many donuts are left for the teachers to eat? So let's use the first problem set to try and highlight the work for this problem. Ready? So I'm going to find my next clean page, which is this one. I'm going to put my first number set at the top. This is going to help me stay organized and remember what I'm doing. I'm going to make a quick annotation for each number so I understand what each number represents. Ready? So these are Mrs. Correa's donuts. These are Mrs. Dusevich's donuts. Putting sprinkles on them. And these are the donuts that fell out of the box. I'm going to put an X on them because that's going to remind me that these are the donuts we're not supposed to eat. Ready? So if I were a mathematician who's still using pictures or kind of drawing out everything, I'm thinking I would directly model it by showing all these donuts. Let's see. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 for Mrs. Correa's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Now, if you notice, mathematicians, I did draw out all the donuts, but at the same time, I was really trying to be organized in my thinking so that I wouldn't have to go back and count them all again one by ones. I made them in groups of 5 so that if I were to ever forget how many I had drawn, I could just look and quickly see how many I was drawing at the time, or it actually makes it easier for me to go back and count them again, see? Because I know that there are 5 in this row, I can easily go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Instead of going all the way back and going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So even if you're someone who's still really comfortable with drawing everything out, that's great, but also try to organize yourselves in a way where if you went back to count out everything, it's still in an efficient way, like maybe by 5s or 10s, something that's very easy for you to count. So let's see. So these were Mrs. Dusevich's donuts. And now this last part are 2 donuts fell out of Mrs. Correa's box. So 1, 2, So how many donuts are left for the teachers to share? Well, I already know that nothing fell out of Mrs. Dusevich's box, so I'm thinking I can just stay at 25 and then maybe count the rest of them. And I might actually label them with numbers. So 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 30. Oh wait, hold on, mathematicians. I was almost going to count these, but then I remembered with my annotation that I crossed them out, so I'm not counting them. And if you notice too, because I was labeling as I was counting, I don't even have to go back to the beginning and count again. I can just look at the previous number for which I labeled and know my answer right away. So it's 33. Did you see how I did that? Now you could also do this problem by doing a strategy that emphasizes friendly numbers. So let's try that. Ready? So Mrs. Correa had 10 donuts. I'm looking at that 25 and I'm thinking I can break apart the 25 into 10, 10, and 5. Or I can break it apart into 20 and 5, and that might make it really easy for me to count if I'm someone who didn't know how to count on by 25s. Ready? So 10, 20 more would make it 30. Then 5 more would make it 35. So there we go. I counted Mrs. Correa's donuts and Mrs. Dusevich's donuts, so I'm at 35. But remember, I have to look back at that number and think about the question. It's not how many donuts Mrs. Correa and Miss Dusevich had. It's how many donuts were left after some of them fell out of Mrs. Correa's box. And so 2 fell out, so I'm going to count back actually 2 spaces. 35, 34, 33. So I counted back 2. So now I have to think about a number sentence that matches this work. So I'm thinking I'm going to write a number sentence for maybe this part that I did. So let's see. I started off with 25. Then I did Mrs. Correa's donuts. And then I went back 2. So if you notice, I actually didn't have to add these 2 numbers in order, 10 and 25. I added them in reverse order, but what really mattered is this last part, that at the end I subtracted 2, but I took away 2 because those were 2 donuts that fell out of Mrs. Correa's box. And that led me to my answer of 33. So now I'm ready for my explanation. Remember, if you want full credit on your assignments, you have to write an explanation. And if you want to use the explanation that I have here as a model, go ahead. Just remember to make sure your explanation matches your work. Ready? So first I drew 10 donuts. Then I drew 25 more donuts. Then I added, or more than, I didn't add, I counted from 25 by 10, right? Because that's what I did right here. By 10 donuts. Next, I crossed out 2 donuts. Finally, I counted the donuts that were left. And got to 33. Do you see how detailed that explanation is? That's exactly what we want to see in your work, first graders. You are capable of doing amazing work, and we just want to make sure that you do it and that we get to see your wonderful thinking. Well, hopefully that unpacking and going over the first number set helped you understand the problem. Don't forget to do your very best this week. I can't wait to work with you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.